caught another. Lively now, aren't you? You should have put that effort into running. It would have made the chase that much more thrilling.
Hello Shination, hope you're well. It's me, Shinrabit, and today we are going to take a trip into the fantastical, emotional, and absolutely terrifying world of Resident Evil 8's expansion called Shadow of Rose. I am an El Gigante fan of Resident Evil. Despite some of the downs, I love this series unconditionally. So when anything Resi is released, you can bet your ass I'll be there. Gimme, I need. So I was eager to jump into this new tale and see how they expand on the Winter storyline. This video I will discuss the highs and lows, we will talk about the third person, and whether or not Shadow of Rose is a success or an utter failure. So grab a lemonade and some Sour Patch Kids because we have a lot to talk about.
Yay! Yay!
I will be talking a few minor reveals, but I will not give away any endgame spoilers or twists. When I get into the minor reveal, I will give a warning, but I can't speak about one of my favourite aspects of the game without mentioning it. But before we start, if you enjoy this, please like and consider subscribing. It means a lot that you guys are watching, so a big thank you, and let's grow this Shin Nation. Much love all. Let me give a real quick summary of the story. So you play as the ugly baby from Resident Evil 8. She's called Rose, and she is the daughter of Ethan Winters, who is the main protagonist from Resident Evil 7 and 8's base game. So this takes place when Rose is 16, and she has these unique powers that is explained in Resident Evil 8 kind of, but she struggled to fit in, and by using her unique powers, she can mentally link with this weird stuff brought from the village. And there you set on a journey to find a crystal that will destroy the curse so she can live a normal life. Now I know this sounds a little bit more like an Evil Within story, I do know. But first off I have to say the story has two sides. The main plot is so out there, and I feel despite playing all the Resident Evil games, I think a lot of the storylines, including the main overarching story to this, is just a bit bloated, and sometimes it feels really nonsensical. But where the story shines is with the personal one regarding Rose. This is one of the most intimate and emotionally driven stories to come out of Capcom's sprawling franchise. It's kind of a coming of age tale that tackles real horrors like troubles of growing up and not fitting in and being different. And I have to give some major props because they tackled some of these. And this is from the company that made me punch a boulder as Big Beefcake Chris. Now, I will go into that with more detail later, but I can't speak about it all without revealing minor things, so we'll come back to this. Let's get on with the actual game. So, Shadow of Rose is split into three sections. You have the first act that feels very similar to Resident Evil 8. You are thrown back into Lady Dimitris's castle as you are being hunted by the Duke, also known as the giant shopkeeper in the base game. And he has these minions that are these humanoid creatures that kind of eat your face off, kind of like a Dementor from Harry Potter, if you can picture that. But if I have to describe the first act of this game, I would say it's samey. The fact that you're exploring the same place you spent a lot of time as Ethan in from the base game, and you're even solving some of the same puzzles. The creatures, other than one mini boss, all just look the same, and they even die the same. They have the same dying animation, and it just gets a little bit samey and old. There's just nothing exciting. The only difference is that you have these powers as Rose that make for a unique puzzles, but again, it's kind of one note all the way through this first act. But like I said, It is fine, and there is an interesting plot featuring clones of your character Rose, and you're introduced to this guardian angel called Michael, who is like a spirit that communicates to Rose through writing on the walls and on the floor and stuff, and I enjoyed that. But if you want more Resident Evil 8, you will enjoy the first hour. But if you were hoping for some originality, you really have to wait for the next act. Because Act 2 is where it gets really interesting. This area is like if Silent Hill and Alice Madness Returns had a baby, and that baby grew up to be nothing like Resident Evil, and it's incredible. Act 2 blew my mind. It takes place in the, and I might destroy this name, the Beneviento house. And if you not sure what that is, in the base game Resident Evil 8, it's that really scary house. I'm sure you remember getting chased by that weird blobby monster with the baby noises. Yep, terrifying.
I'm scared, Pancho.
Bullshit. You ain't afraid of no man.
So you are stripped from all of your weapons, and you have to navigate your way through this tense and hair-raising chapter. It's very fantastical in the way it uses these childlike imagery and these dolls and toys, and they relate to the puzzles as well. So the first puzzle is, it kind of relates to the real life struggles of Rose, and you have to complete these by getting these dolls and recreating scenes of past trauma, and they are very on the nose, to the point where it almost seems like it's teasing Rose.
Yeah, fuck you.
As you are solving these puzzles, there is this giant doll that stands there. The lighting creates a silhouette at the end of a hallway, and you have no choice but to walk towards it unarmed and afraid. Now luckily, the first few times you see it, you are safe, but you are always looking over your shoulder. The music is eerie, but you have to shrug it off because you need to focus on getting out of here ASAP. Then when you complete this smaller puzzle, you get this phone call from this childlike voice, and she says some words that send shivers down your spine. I'll put the clip here.
Jeez, Rose, you're still looking for the crystal? Fine, I'll help you out. Just take the elevator to me. Mommy might be upset that I'm helping you, though.
Who are you?
This is honestly masterful at bleeding dread into this dark atmosphere. And this is where you get one of the most intense horror sequences in the entire Resident Evil franchise. You have to find this fuse for the lift to be able to get out, and you have to traverse through this maze-like house while being hunted down by the creepy doll from earlier. And she can only move when you are not looking at her. This forces you to look into the horror, and when you take your eyes off her, you hear how quickly she is moving, and when you have to come around a corner and you lose sight of her, I lose around 2 years of my life every time. To make things worse, you get multiple of them, and they spread around the room, and I panic because I feel like I cannot look at all of them at the same time. And the second you take your eyes off them and they get close to you, dead. in my opinion, this scene, and the scene set in the house in the base game as well, really shows off another side of Capcom, which is creating pure tension and terror through ambient atmosphere and terrifying set pieces. And despite I do love the survival horror and camp tone and style of the Resident Evil series, it's extremely refreshing to see them tackle this kind of horror, and even more, they make it work.
What is going on here?
Poor little Rose. I'm waiting for you in the back bedroom.
The next section is where the Alice Man's Returns comparison comes into play. Here you shrink and you have to wander around this house almost as a doll yourself, sneaking past dozens of these terrifying kids' toys armed with razor blades, and are actually really creepy. And if they catch you, you just have to watch poor little Rose getting fucked up by a psycho doll that slashes you up. This area is not as good as the last section, but it's still an unnerving set piece that had me clutching my butt tighter than John Cena's pickle jar. Now you see, what has kind of confused me with this DLC is the areas that Resident Evil usually knock out the park, like the survival horror, didn't work as well. But yet the pure horror, almost Silent Hill style areas are fantastic. Now I come to the conclusion that with the first act, with it only being 1 to 2 hours, it's hard to get that survival horror feeling with resource management and things like that. But at the same time, I have to say that it feels a little rushed and it hasn't got as much thought put into it. But that might just be me speculating, and I'm just speaking my mind. However, the rest of the expansion is absolutely incredible, and it really saves the whole experience. Now there's one more thing I wanted to talk about to why I also really enjoyed this, but like I said, it contains a small reveal, so if you don't want to know anything about the story, then go play the game or stop watching. You have been warned.
It feels familiar. Like I've been here before.
Okay, so the bit I wanted to mention is, remember that guardian angel character called Michael that I mentioned? Now it turns out that that is actually Ethan, Rose's dad, and the main character from Resident Evil 7 and 8. And Rose never actually met Ethan, because when she was a baby in the base game, Ethan sacrificed himself to save her. When she learns that this is her dad, it adds so much weight, and it changes the earlier bit in the game when it's Michael, and you realise that all of this encouragement and making sure she's okay, it all makes sense because it's her dad. And it's heart-wrenching and tear-jerking approach. Capcom handled it beautifully. I found myself feeling really emotional as Rose and her dad finally get to talk and have closure. Damn, I never thought I'd be talking about this in a Resident Evil title. So like I said earlier, the base story wasn't particularly special and it never really made that much sense to me. However, it tackled the personal story between fatherhood and Rose's upbringing and issues. They created something really emotionally driven.
This is sad. Very sad only.
I won't go into anything else now because I don't want to go into endgame spoilers and I don't want to talk about the end. But trust me, it is some really impactful work, and well done Capcom there. Now let's talk about the third person. Now Resident Evil 7 and 8, if you played them, are first person games, and they added third person, which is the more Resident Evil style. And I will say it works very, very well. It's not broken, it doesn't seem weird or janky. I haven't played the base game in the third person yet, but from what I've heard it seems to all be fine. It works and it feels very natural. I also had no technical issues with this, it all ran fine. I played the PS4 version because that's what I originally had Resident Evil 8 on when I bought it back in 2021, and I didn't feel the need to upgrade to PS5 and spend an extra 30 quid buying the base game again. Overall, in my opinion, The Shadow of Rose, it starts a bit slow, it felt a little bit repetitive, and I would say if it was just that, it did not succeed. But after that first hour, and it turns into this really unique and extremely terrifying experience that also carries so much emotional weight with our characters, and it did leave me with a satisfying ending, which is pretty badass at the same time. But I would definitely recommend it and go play it for yourself. And to answer my question earlier, is the expansion a success? I would say 100% yes. Because despite it being a DLC, I think the second act in this game, and maybe controversial, is better than any of the areas in Resident Evil 8 base game. And I feel like the story I enjoyed more as well. So despite some of the things it didn't do as great, the things it did well, it did very, very well. But it's only my opinion and tastes. If you would disagree or agree, leave some stuff in the comments and let's have a discussion about it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will let you get back to your day. So with that, Peaces, Deuces, Juices and Pieces. And fuck that scary doll.